in heaven, we so humbly come before you this morning, bowing our heads in prayer as humbly as we can, so thankful for this day. We praise your name. We recognize your greatness, the creator of all things. We ask you to be with our Bible class this morning. Thank you for those that are here that have studied, all the teachers downstairs and the students. Thankful for this congregation. Continue to bless us in our work to serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, so the Israelites are making their way down, aren't they? Started up here in Ramses, crossed the Red Sea, somewhere over in here. The one thing I don't like about this map is it didn't show them heading out and then turning back. Because I think that was a kind of a key point. Because it looked like they were heading out to the wilderness, and then God made them turn back. And that was a key point because God intentionally did that to trap Pharaoh into attacking them again. Because it made them look like they didn't know where they were going, they were lost, and so they took advantage, they tried to take advantage of it. So that's the only difference in this map is I like to see it go out here and then come back. But they crossed the Red Sea, and then we know down and through here, they're already griping and complaining. What were the three things they were griping and complaining about? What was the first one? The bitter water, and they named it what? Mara, yeah. And then what was the second complaint? Then they were getting hungry. And so God gave them manna and quail. Yeah. And what Tom pointed out is not a lot of was mentioned about the quail other than they showed up. And Tom Schmidt had a great point, is that we know that they were, as a big flock, they were tired, right? The birds just kind of like flopped. But they weren't dead. Do you think they killed them all? Or do you think they herded them and maybe grew them, or where do you call it? Breed them? I mean, it doesn't say, but I thought that was a really good point.
How did they feed them? If they didn't have food for themselves, how did they feed them? There you go.
Now next week you can say, Cindy had a good point.
Yeah, Cindy had a good point. Say, all the quail are dead, Cindy. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Hey, give them some manna.
Yeah, that's what I said.
They're small birds, they don't eat much.
And then the third grumbling they had,
Water.
water again. Yeah. So now that brings us kind of down to our lesson today. Then the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. What were the Amalekites known for doing here? Were they raiders? Do you know what a raider is? Yeah, kind of like a pirate. Basically what they would do is they would, let's get up with here first. The Amalekites were from Esau, were Esau's grandson named Amalek. So that's where they come from. Who came from the Edomites, which were from Esau. So isn't it strange that these are relatives? That you know you're fighting relatives. That's just kind of strange. You think they knew that? That they were fighting their relatives? I think, yeah. I think that's just strange that a lot of these are related and they don't care. They just fight each other. And Amalekites, God's going to have it in for them because of this. They lived in the desert. They preyed on the slow and the weak. Those were on the outskirts of the camp. So that's what they would do. Kind of like a lion does when he's looking for the weak and the injured and the small and the lame. So that really upset God, the way they do this. And so Deuteronomy says, remember what the Amalekites did to you along the way when you came out of Egypt, when you were weary and worn out? They met you on your journey and attacked all who were lagging behind and had no fear of God. So that Deuteronomy tells us who the Amalekites were and what kind of people they were. That they were not good people. They were attacking the weak and the lame. And so, yeah, that would get God upset, that he's attacking their people that way. So then we find another guy finally comes into play here. We haven't heard about Joshua yet, have we? This will be the first mention of Joshua. We know that in Exodus 24:13 that he was Moses' assistant. Other than that, we don't know a lot about Joshua at this point, do we? I'm thinking Joshua has had a lot of good character. What do you think some characteristics of Joshua would be?
Steadfast.
Steadfast, yeah. Loyal. Faith, that's probably a big one. I think he would have been a leader among men. Brave. Because who does he call out to attack the Amalekites? Joshua.
And if you look
And
over,
if you look over
in
in Numbers 13, Joshua was the leader of a powerful family called Ephraim in Numbers 13:8. You know, all the tribes had a leader, and Joshua was the leader of Ephraim. Now, Ephraim was a pretty big tribe, wasn't it? It's a really big tribe, a really powerful tribe. And Joshua was considered the leader of that tribe according to Numbers 13, verse 8. Originally, his name was Hoshea, but Moses changed his name to Joshua at Numbers 13, verse 6. What does the name Joshua mean?
the Lord saves. It's the same name as Yeshua or Jesus.
Yeah. So Moses changed his name to meaning the Lord saves. And that's fitting for Joshua, isn't it? Because he's going to save the Israelites multiple times with his leadership, his battle leadership. So the Amalekites came and fought against Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out. Fight against Amalek." Moses told Joshua, "You will fight them tomorrow." Joshua was ready. Are we ready? Notice he didn't give him a lot of notification for this. Sometimes we like notice, don't we, when we're going to do something big? He tells Joshua, tomorrow you're going to go fight them. They haven't really had battle yet, have they? Remember, the reason that they didn't go to the Philistines was because they weren't ready for battle. And even though God put them in battle formation as they went through the desert there, they weren't ready for battle. Where do you suppose they would have gotten some of their weapons that they have now? Of course, they've got to have weapons. Their tools?
They use their tools.
Yeah.
Well, and they plundered because
The Egyptians gave them gifts for their life.
I think that's probably where they got a lot of their weapons now. Suppose that they took a lot of them on the seashore when the Egyptians washed up. You know, took their swords, whatever they can find, plunder them at that point.
So Joshua was ready. He didn't complain, did he? Didn't say he did. 1 Peter 3:15 says, we always need to be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks us to give them an account. As a Christian, we should always be ready. If someone asks you, why are you a Christian? Or why do you do this? Why do you do that? Oh, let me get back to you on that. That's not a good answer. Because that might be your only chance to ever talk to that person. So in some ways, we always need to be ready for that. And not only that, but we should also be ready and willing to work at a moment's notice. Sometimes we have to be willing to set some of our own things aside to work and do some things. Paul told Timothy to be ready in season and out of season, to preach. Even though we might all be preachers, we should all be some sort of teacher. Someone tell me what happened in this battle. Who wants to volunteer? Just a quick synopsis of what happened in this battle. Cindy?
as long as Moses
Thought they won, but when the stars went down, they lost.
That was a really quick synopsis. So God tells Moses to hold up his staff, right?
Staff, right? Like he does a lot of times. This staff really comes into play a lot of times in Moses' leadership, with the rock and things like that. So he tells him to go up on the hill, and you can see the valley there. He says, go up on this hill and hold your staff up. So he does, and they start winning. But naturally, Moses is getting tired. I don't know if God told him this ahead of time, or if they just figured it out. But as his staff came down, as he got tired, they start losing. I think it's kind of funny, if you think about it, how this might have happened. As they start losing, and Moses, maybe he figured it out, or maybe God told him. I don't know. It doesn't say. And so you can imagine the people down here are like, keep your hands up. Don't let them drop. We keep losing when you do that. So who's up here with him? Yeah, Joshua and Hur. Or Aaron and Hur, yeah, not Joshua. Aaron's down here. Aaron and Hur. H-U-R, not H-E-R. They think maybe he was a relative of Caleb, something I read. So what did they do? They sat him down, so he was getting tired of standing and then tired with his arms being held up. You can only hold your arms up for so long. You just physically can't hold them up anymore, especially when you're holding something like a staff or a stick. So each one got on both sides. They'd hold his arms up as he sat on the rock. So this is a position. How long do you think they held that position? All day. All day. It says till sunset. So you think they were getting tired? Sometimes, we have to do what God says, and it involves a little work. It involves some work.
Also pain, Moses' arms must be asleep.
Yeah. The pain of just holding them up.
Yeah.
Maybe going numb. All so they can win this battle.
There's a lot of teamwork going on there. Because Joshua down on the field.
Doing what he was in the battle, and then these guys had to help Moses, so it's like, maybe that was one of the points guys trying to say, yeah, we work together.
Yeah. So even though God is winning this battle, there's still something they had to do. That's kind of the point, is we can't just sit back and let God do all of the work. Sometimes He expects us to do some work. That's part of being a Christian. As a Christian, we need to be a servant, which means we need to work.
Remember, Moses is in his 80s.
Not a young man.
Then the Lord said to Moses, write this in a book as a memorial, and recite to Joshua that I will utterly wipe out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and named it, The Lord is my banner. There's a book mentioned in Numbers 21 as the book of the wars of the Lord. And that's possibly this book that, Moses also is writing and tells him to write it down in this book. It would be great to have that book, wouldn't it? But we didn't get all of the books and everything that was all written down. But it would be neat to see that book. But this war was written down, and I like how it says specifically, tell Joshua. Because, Joshua's down here doing all this work. He probably saw some loss of life on the Israelites. Usually when you start losing, that means you're losing some men. And so I like how he says, tell Joshua that God's going to get the Amalekites back. We're not going to forget this.
I'm thinking of it as maybe it's a plan.
Plans of how they achieved and of course God leading that, but also how they did it along with the help of God. You know what I'm saying? Like you see some of these old movies that depict the old wars, and that's probably the battle plans. That would be like their book to go to defeat the enemy.
Yeah.
300 years later, Samuel gave God orders. He orders King Saul to kill who? The Amalekites. So 300 years later, God is patient, but God is just, and He will do what He says. It might not be in your time frame, might not be in your lifetime, Joshua, but it will happen. So that was the key: is tell Joshua this will happen. Might not be in your lifetime, but it will happen. Just like He said with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you guys will inherit the land. but it's just not going to happen in your lifetime. And of course, we know what happened in that battle, right? Amalekites were utterly destroyed. All the animals and the king and everybody, right? Tim's like, no. King Saul kind of got in trouble because he didn't kill the king. And he kept the best of the cattle and the sheep. God told him not to do that. Remember when they went into Jericho? They weren't supposed to take anything also. And they did. And God got upset. So Samuel reprimanded Saul, and he lost his kingship. That's when God told him, no, you can't be king anymore because of that. And then Samuel killed Agag. Hacked him up, it says. Right there. You're not going to do it? I'll do it. Samuel was, wasn't a man of war, but he did it. So, but Amalekites were destroyed, like God said. Maybe a depiction of Mount Sinai? We don't know. There's several guesses on which mountain it is. I think it's a good-looking mountain. It's a good-looking Mount Sinai. Moses had sent his wife Zipporah and his 2 sons to stay with Jethro for a while. Jethro was a priest in the land of where? Midian. Moses spent 40 years there. And now that he's with the Israelites, they're wandering through the wilderness. I want to keep my wife and kids safe. Go live with your father-in-law for a while. That seems reasonable, doesn't it? So he did. But now then Jethro came to Moses in the desert with Zipporah. So now that Moses is kind of getting close to the land of Midian, we're not sure. That might be on the other side of the Gulf. Jethro visits Moses. And so Jethro shows up. Moses bows and kisses Jethro and then went into the tent, both of them. And Moses told Jethro all that God had done. A lot of stories. Probably started from the plagues, down to the Passover, the crossing of the Red Sea, the bitter water, the manna, all of that. The water out of the rock. So he's telling Jethro these things. And Jethro was a priest of the Midianites, wasn't he? So he wasn't a priest of God, Jehovah. He was a pagan priest. But notice what it says here. Jethro said, "Give praise to the Lord. He saved you and your people from Pharaoh. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods." Now I know. I think he can just convert Jethro. So Jethro offered gifts to God. Then Aaron came with the leaders and they shared a meal. So I think this is a neat little passage because it's really showing the growth of Jethro as well as Moses. What do you like about this story? What do you like about how Moses greeted Jethro, his father-in-law?
Hey, it's kind of interesting. It's similar to the way we would talk, right? You go out and
And we greet each other, and they kind of say, hey, how's the family, how is everyone? And then it's come in and talk. And it's very similar to the way we would.
Yeah, and sometimes with
It could be a strained relationship. He lived with Jethro for 40 years. So they probably had a good rapport, but he's very respectful of his father-in-law. And you're going to see that even more here as we come through the story. We're told to honor our father and mother so that the days may be long in the land. And I think he does a good job, even though it's his father-in-law, he honors it like he should. That's Exodus 20, verse 12. Who wrote that? Moses wrote that. So naturally, he better be respectful to his elders and his father-in-law. He's telling everyone else to do it. Leviticus 19:32 says, "You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man." Who wrote that? Moses. Do you think that's even Old Testament? Do you think we should do that today? Be respectful to our elders? Does that mean stand up for the gray head? It's common, at least it was in our society, when a woman entered the room, that you would stand up as she entered the room. But maybe more so for the elderly. Think about that. When someone needs a seat, you stand up, you give them your seat. Stand up to shake their hand, you stay seated. Just some things to think about. But I like how Moses, he really honored the elderly and his in-laws. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. I was talking to a guy just yesterday, he's a teacher, and he was just telling me how disrespectful children are today at schools. They just don't respect their elders anymore. And they don't care. They don't care. I think our generation, we didn't talk that way to adults. We didn't disrespect our teachers. But you're just seeing that so much now, the kids don't care. They say anything, whatever they want to their teachers, knowing that there's not going to be any repercussions. Do not despise your parents when they get old. I just see that too often, that kids for some reason have something against their parents as they get older. I don't like how you raised me. You know what you did. We all make mistakes, right? None of us are perfect. You weren't the perfect child. They weren't the perfect parent. We forgive, right? But so many times you see that child will not let something go. Sad. I've seen it. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So this Ephesians, we're told to do that. And that part of that is honoring them. But Moses is a great example, and he gave us multiple passages telling us how to do that. So Moses served as judge over the people. So Jethro shows up, visiting Moses, and he kind of looking at Moses' daily activities. So what does Moses do every day, all day? What does a leader of the free world, of the people of Israel, do all day? Well, looks like he was pretty busy judging the people. You know, these are just a ragtag band of people. They're not a nation yet. So when they have a complaint, who are they going to go to? When they have controversy, who do they go to? They're going to go to Moses. And so he spent his time under this tent, sitting all day, listening to people's complaints. And this is what Jethro noticed. Jethro said, "It's too much. Why are you the only judge for all these people? Why do they stand around you from morning to evening? What you're doing is not good. All the people will wear out. There's too much work for you. You cannot do this alone." What does that mean, all the people will wear out?
It was a long wait to get Moses' attention. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to court and wait all day for a judge. They would probably get worn out, getting tired waiting on him, getting impatient. Moses was getting worn out.
And Jethro sees this, being the wise man he is. These are some things he says. He says, God will help you. You must speak to God on behalf of the people. You must tell their problems to him. You must teach the people God's rules and laws. This is Jethro, who's been a priest of Midian. And just notice the change in him, how he talks. You must teach the people God's rules and laws. You must show them the way to live. You must show them the work they must do for God. You know how everything he's saying is now God-centered. Isn't that great? I think that's important. That's a good lesson for us. Like, everything in our life should be God-centered. Everything we do should be, are we doing it for God? The work that we do. A lot of times we put our secular work up here, and then everything else secondary, and that shouldn't be the case. Even when we're doing our secular work, we should thank God for the work that he has given us to do, the blessing that work is. But we shouldn't put that work before God. Because now what are we saying? That's more important. Thank you, God, for blessing me with this job, the opportunity to do this and make this money. But now I'm going to put you secondary. That's not good thanking, is it? But unfortunately, we see that a lot. People pray for good jobs. God blesses them with good jobs. And then they shut God aside. We see that very often. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. You know, I just thought about this verse when I was thinking of Moses, because Moses had an interesting upbringing. I think he was partly raised by his mom, his real mom, but also by Pharaoh's daughter, who grew up in the Egyptians. But he was trained right, wasn't he? Because notice what kind of a wise man he is. Now, he did spend 40 years with Jethro as a shepherd, and I think that's where he learned a lot of this. And I think he grew up. He wasn't quite that same person when he was in Egypt. But we see that a lot. When someone's trained right, a lot of times they come back to do what's right. So he was told, Jethro says, now you need to pick some men. What are these men going to do? What does this remind you of in the New Testament?
12 disciples.
12 apostles? Yeah. The deacons, I was thinking of the deacons when they had to serve the widows. They were to choose men, and what were some of the qualifications of those men?
Full of the Spirit as well.
Yeah? Full of Spirit?
Right, reputation, things like that. Well, these men had to be the same way. So Jethro said, select able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain. Why the dishonest
gain? That's got to be a key part.
Yes, so they won't be bribed. Oh, that doesn't happen
today, does it?
No, not at all.
Our leaders wouldn't take money from foreign countries, would they? In the term of millions and millions? Yeah, they wouldn't do that. That's not right. He said, place them over thousands, place them over hundreds, place them over 50s, place them over tens. What does that sound like to you? It sounds like the military. Yeah. Sounds like, is that what you said, the Army?
Yeah, like an army formation.
Yeah. Because, as you go up in rank, that just puts you in charge of more people. Listening to Seth over the years, it's like, what's going on? Now they put me in charge of more people. Then next time they promoted me, now I'm just in charge of more people. Babysitting, he calls it. But yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. He's forming them as a military, but judges. And I guess that's how our system's probably set up too. Yeah. If you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure all these people and also will go to their place in peace. So if you do this, you'll be happy and then they'll be happy. Maybe he liked being the judge. Maybe he liked being in charge.
I don't think so.
No? Since you mentioned that, Bill, when there's not elders, where does a lot of that responsibility fall in the congregation? It goes to Bill. For years we didn't have elders. And who would people always call? Bill. So we need to, Tom and I have been elders, for years now, but we still need to, I think we all still need to work on changing our perspective that when we need to talk to someone when something's go wrong, you don't have to call Bill anymore.
Please don't.
So, that's our job now. We'll take on that responsibility. We have taken on that responsibility. So call us any time of the day, night. It's fine. But that's what he's doing here. He's putting men in charge so he doesn't have to do all the work.
I like it when he says, if you do this thing and God so commands you.
Yeah.
That reminds me of James. Do all things according to the Lord's will. If it's the Lord's will,
It's the Lord's will.
just that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Go and get gain. So Jethro is showing some real respect for God here. And telling Moses, now, I'm making this suggestion to you, but you need to check with God and make sure it's okay.
I think that shows amazing wisdom for Jethro.
I think also, it's possible that Moses liked being in charge, because that's definitely something that humans do.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right, but we also know he was later defined as very meek. And I was thinking from his perspective, it could, instead of him wanting it, it could be that he felt like this was what he had to do, and he didn't have the courage to trust other men because he trusted God to help them too. I think we do that sometimes. I know I do. I put too much on my plate because I think God put it there, but he didn't. He tells me to get help. I can't do it alone. And I get overwhelmed, and it's because I'm not doing what God said. I'm putting more on my plate than I should.
Yeah. That's the way the church is set up.
Jethro here tells him to do this, and Moses says, that's a good idea. Of course, God had approved of this. But still, Moses has God's spirit guiding him. And so Moses still takes that burden upon himself and takes too much because he's being led by God. And so later on, maybe much later on, maybe years later, he runs to God that it's too much. And then God, following this example, takes part of the spirit that is on Moses and distributes that spirit on other men, like this chain of command, so that the burden won't be too much.
Yes, that's good. So Moses listened to him and did everything that he had said. That's pretty impressive. A lot of times we don't like to listen to our elders. We want to do it our own way. That's a very frustrating thing, especially with young people. Sometimes you just can't tell them, can you? They're going to do it their own way, and you know they're going to make a mistake. Even though you've been through it. That's very frustrating as when you're trying to give someone advice and they don't take it and you know they're not going to take it. Deanne?
I think that's the most impressive verse.
Just listened and did what he said and respected him. And I always say we live in a read-a-ball nation. Young people don't want to do that. And they always want to explain away that we don't understand the dynamics of today. It's a different age, and it's almost a forgotten idea that you would go to an elderly or older person and seek counsel. But Moses could have done the same thing. Oh, I've been with these people, you don't understand, He just listened and did what he said. And then the outcome for him, compared to Rehoboam, was so much better.
We don't really know the age difference between Moses and Jethro, do we? It could have been that he wasn't even that much older than him. I mean, Moses was 40 when he married his daughter. But sometimes it doesn't even matter. If someone's in a position of authority, you should still listen to them. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be older than me. I should respect them.
When it comes to judgment, when you have delayed judgment, it has a tendency to increase mischief and confusion. I wonder if Moses hadn't also noticed maybe if that was possible in that situation. Because if a person's not doing right and he's not getting judged, he can continue to do wrong with no consequences.
Well, Jethro was saying something because he saw it as a problem. People were getting tired.
Well, that's natural.
Yeah.
Sometimes when someone comes into a new situation, they're looking at it with fresh eyes. This was going on and on and on, and that's just the way it was. But Jethro saw from the outside, and he could see it. So sometimes someone with a different perspective.
Yeah. Sometimes as you get bigger, you gotta have some organization. And that's what Jethro saw.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd just like to go back to business a little bit, what you said, about folks calling you over Tom. I really want everybody in the congregation to understand the situation that we have here as far as you and Tom being the elder. It's very similar, y'all are very similar in the position that Moses was. You are the only ones that God has authorized to hold an office in the local congregation and an office of authority. No one else, the deacon, the preacher, nobody else has the authority that you and Tom have. So consequently, we need whenever we have an idea for something, to do something, like the idea I had about having the templates already ready for people, and we went to the Chief Shepherd Center to open, and I needed to check with y'all and make sure that's okay, because we need to understand that y'all are in authority, and we need to check with you and Tom and make sure that what we're doing is in harmony with doing the work that God has given us to do in the scriptural thing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and that's just something we all have to get used to, because you haven't had elders for a long time. You just get bad habits. So we all need to break habits, including Tom and I. And Bill probably mostly, because he's used to doing a lot of it and taking phone calls. He needs to start telling people, oh, you need to call Dale and Tom on this. You really need to call them first. Something happened to this slide, but the gist of it was that Moses was a very humble man. And going along with what Deanne said, that he could have gotten a big head at this point. He's doing all these miracles for God, and he's put in a position of authority, and he's leading all these people. It's easy to get a big head. But that's why God tells elders not to be novices, not to be inexperienced, because of that very reason. And I think the same was probably with Moses. When he was 40, he wasn't ready. And it could have been for that reason. After 40 years of being a shepherd, maybe he learned a little humility. And so now, in Numbers, it said he was one of the most humble men on the face of the earth.
Yeah, we have a similar example as well. Moses was in a position of great authority for the fact that God chose him to lead his people and that sort of thing. In the New Testament, we've got a man by the name of Apollos who was mighty in the scriptures and whatever, but came Aquila and Priscilla, and they heard him and recognized that he did not know that true baptism. He was still teaching concerning the baptism. And they took him aside and they taught him, and if they were teaching him, that meant that he was sitting comfortably listening.
Yeah, we mentioned that with Apollos. Now we got to move on here real quick.
On Moses' behalf, you look at the history of the story, look at the people he was dealing with. Many were stiff-necked complainers. I mean, you gotta think twice about what you're gonna do with these people.
Yeah. It's a shame. I really like that slide too. So here they are in Rephidim. Now they're going down to Mount Sinai, which the traditional is down here. So here the covenant is offered. The people arrive at Mount Sinai. God tells Moses, this is what I want you to tell Israel. You saw what I did to the Egyptians. You also see how I carried you on eagle's wings. In Deuteronomy 32:11, when it talks about eagles, what does it say about them? And when an eagle carries its young on its wings, what is it doing? It's throwing them out of the nest, and if they can't fly, it swoops underneath them and carries them on its wings. That's what that means. God says, I carried you on eagle's wings. Right? When you've fallen, I'm going to carry you. I'm going to hold you up. That's a beautiful analogy. I brought you to myself. Now this is my offer. If you will truly obey my voice, notice he said truly. I like that. If you truly obey my voice, because up until now, they really haven't, have they? If you keep my agreement, then you will be my own special people out of all the earth. All the earth belongs to me, but you will belong to me in a special way. You will be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. That's a beautiful promise. And he's telling them, listen, I own the entire earth, and all these people are mine, but you will be special. That's a place of honor. And that's how we should feel today. Because that's us. We're God's special people today. They responded, we will do everything Jehovah commands. So it's easy to talk the talk, but it's sometimes when push comes to shove, are you going to walk the walk? And the Israelites kept proving that they can't walk the walk. They had to talk. Notice that God said if you would truly obey, God doesn't just want lip service. God wants their hearts. He was setting them apart from all the other people on the earth,
They should feel special and honored. God has always wanted this kind of relationship with his people. And he's setting that up. He's setting that up now. There's going to be some bumps and some bruises. You'll eventually get there. But that's all leading to what? Us. That's all the setup. What he really is setting up is this relationship that we have with him now. That wasn't even the end result. Peter's statement that Christians are to be the chosen generation. Christians are the royal priesthood. Christians are a holy nation and are a peculiar people. That's the point. Peter's referring to what God said to the Israelites as a foreshadowing of what's to come. And that's what we're in now. Christians are those who have accepted the new covenant offered by Christ. And another reason we keep our behavior is we are to be holy because God is holy, but also and it says in 1 Peter 2:12, if we do this, other people will watch us. Other people will observe, and that's how you teach. So it's important that we be holy because people are watching, the world is watching you, and they're watching you because why? They want to catch you in mistakes. They want to say, see, Christians are hypocritical. How many have heard that? The Lord said, behold, I will come to you in a thick cloud so that people may hear when I speak, and you may also trust you forever. So they're supposed to go around this mountain. God says, I'm going to come in a thick cloud. But he also says, so that you will hear me when I speak. So God wants to get closer to them. And they're going to know that God is in that cloud and that they're going to be able to hear him. And the Lord said, go to the people and consecrate them today for tomorrow. Have them wash their garments. Have them ready on the third day. And on the third day, the Lord will come down. Set boundaries around the mountain. Do not let anyone go past those boundaries or touch the mountain, whether it's a person or an animal, or you will be killed, you will be stoned, or you will be shot. When the ram's horn sounds in 3 days, I want you to bring the people up to the mountain, but not cross the boundaries, or you will be killed. He warns them multiple times. Moses says, be ready on the third day, and do not go near a woman. Just kind of throws that in. In other words, have no relationships for 3 days. So this is how God's going to approach that mountain. It's going to be dark clouds, thunder, lightning. It's going to be very scary. On the third morning, there was thunder and lightning, flashes and thick clouds over the mountain, so the people trembled and stood I would tremble too. The earth was quaking. There was thunder. There was lightning. It was a dark cloud. And the people were trembling. The smoke was like the smoke of a furnace. You picture what a fire on a house fire looks like. We've all seen those in the area. Sometimes you'll see it. I think Heather posted one recently, but it's billowing black smoke coming up from that house. It's what it looks like, and I think that's probably what this looked like, because it says it looked like billowing smoke from a furnace and the violent quaking. And then the trumpet grew louder and louder. Then God answered Moses with thunder. The Lord came down to the top of the mountain and called Moses and told him to warn the people not to break the boundaries. So God warns them again. Don't break the boundaries or you will die, because these people tend to not listen, right? He didn't want any of them to die, because no matter how many, when you got 1 million people, no matter how many times you say it, someone is going to do it. Always. Remember when he told them, well, we'll get into that. Why did Moses protest in verse 23? Moses protested God here when God said that. Why did he protest? He got kind of upset at God.
He said that he'd already told them that.
Yeah. Right. But God's being repetitive. Why? Because they weren't listening. So who went back to the mountain with Moses? No one was supposed to go. But God said, bring Aaron. And why Aaron? Being high priest. Who was the only one that can go in the place, the most holy place? The high priest. And that would be Aaron. When they get that tabernacle set up in the temple, high priest is the only one that can go back there. No one else. Even though the priests served the gifts and they had a lot of responsibility, they still were not to be the ones in God's presence. Only the high priest, and that's why he chose Aaron. Good class. Thank you, everyone.